I cannot believe we ever would have gotten to the point where my girl Bernice would be getting a buff, but let's be honest, she did need it. And what could be the best way to buff her? Right, by taking a blooms from Vivian and slapping it into Bernice's kit. So today let's talk about her new and updated kit and how she plays, her best weapons, distress and disdrive sets, her main and substats, her team center, Mindscapes, and lastly, let's also talk about her pros and cons. Welcome! I am Rivenous, and this is your complete updated in-depth guide to Bernice Y. Bernice is a Fire Anomaly sub-DPS who excels at applying Fire Anomaly from off-field through her unique mechanic Afterburn. Bernice is also the only agent who can actually trigger an anomaly while being completely off-field without needing any specific action, such as an EX special for Vivian's blooms for example, and with her buffs Bernice now has access to a new EX special, which also lets her trigger a bloom when switched in after a certain amount of afterburns have been triggered. Bernice features a unique resource called Heat. As per usual, it is displayed right below her HP bar and caps out at 100 points. Bernice also features this little dot next to it, which we will talk about later. Bernice begins combat with 100 points of heat, and for every point of energy she spends, she will restore 1.4 heat. If Bernice has at least 50 heat, which means half of her bar, she then enters the nitro fuel cocktail state. She will remain in said state until all of the heat is depleted, and because we always want to be in said state, we will ideally never deplete all heat. While in the state, when using her enhanced basic attack, EX special chain or ultimate, she will then apply a debuff on enemies called Scorched. Whether or not an enemy is scorched is indicated by this little cute burn VFX upon them. Scorched lasts until she exits her state, but because, again, we never really want to leave said state, it will effectively last forever. If scorched enemies are hit by other squad members, Bernice will then expand 8 heat to trigger Afterburn. Afterburn deals some damage, accumulates fire anomaly build-up, and can also critically strike. Because of the latter, if you really like off-meta builds, Critnies is actually a thing, even if it is not all too great and does somewhat require also her Mindscape 4 to actually work properly. Afterburn can trigger once every 1.5 seconds at a maximum, and for every 10 anomaly proficiency Bernice has, Afterburn also gains a 1% damage bonus up to a maximum of 30%. This means at the very minimum we require 300 anomaly proficiency on her, but frankly it is also very difficult to not hit that threshold. Each Afterburn procs inflicts also 60 fire anomaly at its base, but it also scales with her anomaly mastery and anomaly build-up rate, so a maxed out Bernice can hit a good 180 anomaly per Afterburn proc. Lastly, Afterburn's damage is also considered assist damage, which is relevant for Chaos Jazz. Bernice requires either a Sons of Caledon or Anomaly Agent, and when that condition is met, the duration of burn is increased by 3 seconds, and the anomaly build-up of her Afterburns, EX specials, and basic attack Mixed Flame Blend is increased by 65% as well. During her Nitro Fuel cocktail state, holding down her basic attack will make her spin around, deal some assist damage, and trigger an additional cost-free Afterburn. Yes, it is considered assist damage, yes, it also triggers a free Afterburn, but it still costs 20 heat to use, so I guess it's not really free. After her buffs, however, it can still be worth using it, as doing so often enough can lead to another 1 or maybe even 2 bloom procs. More on that in a bit. As for her regular basic attacks, her dodge, dash attack, dodge counter, and also special, they are all not worth using basically ever, so we will forget they exist. Her quick assist, defensive assist, and assist follow-up also all do what they are supposed to do, and while we will occasionally use them, we will not cover them any further. Her ultimate also does what an ultimate is supposed to do, but it will also trigger a quick assist midway throughout, and using said quick assist will extend to the duration of her ultimate. That also means we always want to use said quick assist. Additionally, it will also restore 50 heat, and if you are into crit knees, well, the damage multiplier is pretty high after all. Her chain attack isn't all that remarkable, but both her chain and her ultimate have a very high anomaly application. In fact, her chain attack has the highest anomaly application in the game, more than doubling any other chain attack. That alone can make it very worthy using her chain attack. Bernice features 3 EX specials, and also one special, but as I already said earlier, we will never really use it, so we forget it exists. As for her first EX special, we will rarely actively use it, as we usually want to use the double shot version of it instead, and many of her skills can directly transition into said double shot version. However, it should be mentioned that especially when played with Vivian, it is worth using her single shot EX more often than not, simply for the double bloom procs we can get from it. Holding her EX special button pressed right after her assist follow-up, chain attack or intense heat tossing method, more on that in just a bit, will have Bernice transition into her EX special double shot, which will cost 10 energy as well as 12.5 energy every second to deal damage and inflict fire anomaly in a cone in front of her. And lastly, as already mentioned before, we can also transition into the double shot move right after the single shot version. This double shot EX special will be your primary way to restore heat, outside of her ultimate that is. With her buffs, Bernice now also gains access to a new EX special, called Intense Heat Tossing Method. For every 12 triggers of Afterburn, Bernice will gain 1 stack of Ember Flow. If Bernice has Ember Flow and is switched in, Intense Heat Tossing Method will automatically trigger, consuming said Ember Flow point to deal fire damage, anomaly and also trigger a bloom. The fire anomaly can also benefit from her additional abilities increased fire anomaly build-up, and as for the Abloom, it just works as every other Abloom does, it deals damage based on the current anomaly's type and its original damage. If Afterburn is triggered through her held basic attack, it counts as 2 triggers for Ember Flow, and hence it helps in building Ember Flow up faster, but I personally did not find it worth using pre-Awakening 2. More on that later. This EX special, Intense Heat Tossing Method, is an entry skill, and hence it is also considered a quick assist. Whether or not her entry skill, and by that I mean the point of Ember Flow, is available is indicated by the little dot in her resource bar. If it is glowing orange, her entry skill is available and she will cast the skill upon switch in. Unfortunately for us, that also already entails her entire relevant kit. So let's quickly summarize how we play her. Or not, since, well, at combat start we press either her special or held basic once to apply Scorched, and then we don't play her for most of the time and instead have her off-field building up fire anomaly through her said afterburns. If heat runs somewhat low, we switch her in and hold her EX special. If she does have Ember Flow available, she will also cast her entry skill here, which we then can transition from into her held EX special. We use her ultimate and chain attacks when applicable, and lastly, if we have her at Awakening 2 or higher, we do want to make use of her held basic quite regularly. And that is really all you have to know about Bernice. She is really incredibly simple to play. Most of her damage is anomaly and disorder damage, with a non-negligible part coming from her Ablooms, here indicated as core because I am too lazy to change this from Vivian, and her afterburns indicated as assist because, well, they deal assist damage. How many Ablooms you get and how large its damage contribution will be will depend largely on how you play, and hence this might not be 100% accurate if you play differently. With Afterburn's inherent cooldown of 1.5 seconds at Awakening 1 and 1.35 seconds at Awakening 2, that also means the maximum number of Afterburn procs are 120 and 133 respectively in a deadly assault fight, which in turn means 10 or 11 Ablooms at maximum. More realistic are 9 and 10 Ablooms respectively however, and if you make use of her enhanced basic attack for additional trigger counts, you might get one more. Let's first clarify her skill priority, because basically all of her damage is anomaly damage with a small part coming from her EX and ultimate. Our skill priority will be to level and max out her core skill first and foremost, followed by her EX Special and Ultimate, into her Assist and Basics, and lastly Dodge. Frankly, we can leave all of her Basics, Assist and also Dodge at level 1, although the additional days from her Assist can be pretty nice. Or in other words, her investment is incredibly cheap, because Bernice doesn't really have any combos outside of hold EX Special pressed, press Ultimate and switch into her once in a while if this little dot glows. We will skip the combo section, she doesn't really have any after all. Although it should be again noted that her awakening levels can have an influence on whether or not her enhanced basic attack is used, so let's talk about it. Bernice's Awakening 1 grants her access to her EX Special Intense Heat Tossing method, that is the one skill that gives her a Blooms, and modifies her held basic attack to both count as assist damage and to also proc 1 free Afterburn, which counts double for the purpose of Intense Heat Tossing method. Again, that is her a Bloom proccing EX Special. And also again, free at the cost of 20 heat, so it's not really free in that sense, but anyway. At A2, Bernice's Afterburn cooldown will be reduced from 1.5 to 1.35 seconds, which in itself just means a lot more fire anomaly from her Afterburns and also allows for one more Bloom. In addition, for every 0.1 initial energy regeneration exceeding 1.8, Bernice will now gain Anomaly Mastery and damage bonus up to a maximum of 25%. This amount then scales from A2 to A6. There's a problem here, however. Because her signature gives her in combat energy regeneration, it is not accounted for this bonus. Since we can now obtain Anomaly Mastery and some damage bonus by building energy regeneration on her, running a 2P Swing Jazz or Moonlight Lullaby and energy regeneration in slot 6 allows for enough Anomaly Mastery and damage bonus for the additional EX Specials and held basic attacks to be worth it over Anomaly Mastery in slot 6, starting at Awakening 2. Means regardless of whether you run her signature weapon or not, you will always need her Awakening Potential 6 to actually gain the full bonus from it. I would highly recommend getting her Awakening 2 as it is in fact a pretty good upgrade, even for crit knees, as the additional afterburns we are getting is just a lot more damage. So far though, we have only talked about her builds, at least a little bit, so how does her enhanced basic attack factor into all of this? Without her signature, a 2-piece energy disc and ER in slot 6, given the 20 heat needed to cast the skill, I personally do not find worth it using it. Heat requires energy or decibels to obtain, and without her signature's additional energy regeneration and additional ER from slot 6 or a 2-piece Swing Jazz, we will most of the time not have the heat to sustain the usage of it. However, it should be noted that the free Afterburn from the skill does not trigger its inherent 1.5 seconds cooldown, and if you are running her signature and have her at Awakening 2 or higher, with an ER 2-piece and also ER in slot 6, we will be overflowing on energy, which solves the aforementioned problem. Because of this, actively using her held basic attack for additional Bloom procs is ideal whenever we run her signature and energy regeneration in both slot 6 and as well as her 2-piece. Without her signature, we still want to use it occasionally, but we will not be able to afford the usage as often as we would be with her signature. All of this may lead you to think that her signature is pretty important, so let's cover her weapons. Bernice's best weapon is her signature, but Practice Perfection is pretty close, and generally speaking, she has really good weapon choices. Please keep in mind that these are team damage calculations, and so this does not portray her own personal damage. Doing so would look a lot worse, given that she is a sub-DPS, and that also would undervalue Anomaly Mastery because of less disorders and stuff. Anyway, her signature is her best choice, followed by Practice Perfection and Electro Lip Gloss R5. Weeping Gemini is as per usual the best free-to-play choice. None of this changes with her awakenings, so we will not touch upon it further. Bernice's signature is a good quality of life gain, and whether or not it will perform higher than shown here will largely depend on how well you can make use of her held basic attack. If you can effectively spend and regain the heat required to obtain at least 2 additional blooms from her signature, the value of her own weapon will be higher than shown here. However, as I do not expect most people to do that, I have also calculated it as such. Bernice wants a 4-piece Chaos Jazz, and that is the only real choice. For the two-piece, any of Phaethon's Melody, Puffer Electro, Freedom Blues, Inferno Metal, Hormone Punk or Astral Voice will do well enough. As previously mentioned, starting at Awakening 2 however, a two-piece Swing Jazz or Moonlight Lullaby can be her best choice, but regardless the difference is not too big, especially if you run her signature. Anomaly Proficiency in slot 4, Pen Ratio in slot 5 and Anomaly Mastery in slot 6 are Burnish's best choices, but Fire Damage in slot 5 can do as well. Attack percent and Energy Regeneration in slot 6 are both still pretty bad and should not necessarily be considered, unless you have her at Awakening 2 or higher, in which case Energy Regeneration does become her best in slot choice. I do want to mention that this is only the case if you can make sufficient use of the additional energy. If you do not get additional burns or disorders from the additional EX specials you technically have access now to, as well as additional ablooms from her health basic attacks, this is not worth it as much and you are likely still better off simply sticking to Anomaly Mastery instead. But if you can make use of it, that means you don't actually overcap on energy all the time, it is better. Focus on Anomaly Proficiency and attack percent first and foremost, then flat pen and lastly flat attack. Burnish's M1 is much more of a quality of life change rather than a damage gain, but the additional fire anomaly build up to her afterburns can be very helpful in triggering additional burns. If you are playing crit knees, you will enjoy the 100% additional MV on her afterburns as well. Her Mindscape 2 applies effectively a team-wide 20% pen ratio, which is honestly pretty very good, nothing to add here. M3 and M5 exist, barely at least, and her M4 is the best Mindscape Burnish has. If you are playing crit knees, otherwise it just exists as well. Her M6 though is pretty fantastic. When Burnice uses her EX double shot, she gets a special afterburn effect that triggers once every 0.5 seconds and does not use any heat. All that while also getting a 25% fire red shred on both her EX double shots burn and also the afterburns it triggers. It also deals an additional 1800% MV based on the last burn instance up to 9 times a fight. It is a very good damage gain for the team and Burnish's best Mindscape. I would recommend Burnish's Mindscape 2 over her signature, but if you have to choose between her M2 and her signature, I would recommend her signature for the quality of life it gives in terms of energy, as well as also rising the maximum potential of her awakenings. The good thing about Burnice is that she fits into effectively every single anomaly team. The bad thing about Burnice is that she effectively fits into every single anomaly team, but is outclassed in basically all of them by Vivian. That is not necessarily only because Vivian is just better, but also because of elemental matchups. The current bosses we can play anomaly well against are Fiend, who is weak to Ether and has a 40% fire resistance, UCC, who favors Ether, Marionettes, who favor Ether, Bringer, who favors, well, Miyabi and mainly Miyabi, and Pompeii, who is actually a pretty good matchup for Burnice. So effectively, the problem Burnice runs into, at least for Deadly Assault, is not that she is utter garbage. She isn't. The problem is, at least for Deadly Assault, that outside of Pompeii, she has no matchups where she would be favorable over other choices, such as Vivian or even Yanagi. Burnice does work with Miyabi against Bringer, but you could also just play Mono Ice or even Yanagi and achieve better results. This doesn't change with her buffs either, unfortunately, and in my opinion her buffs are simply not good enough. It should however also be mentioned that fire weakness is much more common in Shio defense and also often paired with a physical weakness, which makes Burnice shine much more in that game mode rather than in Deadly Assault. Regardless, if you want to play Burnice, as previously stated, she will fit into every single anomaly team, be it a physical team with Jane, Piper or Alice, a dual Abloom team with Grace, or simply as a sub DPS for Yanagi. She can also pair with Vivian and Miyabi, but in my opinion other choices are superior for her over those two. They do deserve a mention however, and on the note of Vivian, as previously mentioned already, we actually do want to use her single shot EX special in this team, as we can proc additional Ablooms by doing so. Lastly, if you are like me and completely defy all of the matter, just play M6 Critneys. She does well with Evelyn and Soldier 11, but unless you have a highly vertically invested Mindscape 4 plus Critneys, I would not recommend doing so. Again, especially her Mindscape 4 is incredibly important for playing her with crits. Anyway, pros and cons time. Bernice is a highly flexible unit who fits into essentially every single anomaly team in existence. She is, however, also frequently outclassed by Vivian or Yanagi, often due to unfavorable matchups. Her investment is cheap, not only in terms of her skill levels, but she also already uses an established set in Chaos Jazz you might already have lying around. Her weapon options are okay too, especially if you have other premium options, and her Mindscape 2 and Mindscape 6 are great. Her awakening potentials are sadly, however, a little bit more on the lower side, but that is mainly due to damage contribution. Lastly, Critney's is the best propaganda to have ever happened to this game, aside from Collida. I love Collida too. With that said, we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment on your thoughts on Bernice and also her buffs. Do you think they are enough? Well, let me know in the comments, and also, of course, join the Discord. A special thanks to my YouTube and Patreon members who make this content possible. If you wish to support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description, or click the join button right below this video. And as always, I appreciate all of you and wish you a great day. Peace!